So happy. What have we got today? Happy 15th of January 2026, my lovely listeners out there, and welcoming to the podcast, my wonderful friend, amazing Angie Alderman. My lovely Angie, I will share a little bit about how we originally met. As far as I remember, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it was during COVID. And during COVID, I decided to go heads on, full on, everything online in every single way that I could sort of help others and also help myself feel more connected. And I did this thing where I offered an energy healing session. I think it was by donation or something like that. But I didn't offer it until like 12 minutes into my big talk about life and weird and wonderful things, and thinking no one is going to reach out because no one listens for 12 minutes. And then there you were. All of a sudden, this wonderful woman, yourself, Angie Alderman, reached out to me and went, hey, that sounds kind of nice, that energy healing thing. Let's do it. Is that right, Angie? Is that how we met?
Yeah, we met during COVID, that's correct. And the energy healing that I came to you for was really based around that existential kind of crisis that we were having during COVID. So it was, nothing was happening. There was communities and support networks flourishing in different spaces, but there was, I wanted to go to a space that was more felt sense and more body embodied. And then this happened. So I just felt that this was just something I had to lean into. And actually, I have to say that with all of the kind of medical people that I've met and all the different types of practitioners that I've met, this experience was the most profound and most healing that I had encountered. And it was exactly what I needed at that time to kind of move forward that real kind of, as I say, existentialism that was happening all around.
Oh my God, that's absolutely amazing to hear. I'm sitting here like I just got goosebumps. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy that it had such a profound effect on you. That's just, yeah, so beautiful. I'm going to read up your bio here because as much as we're going to be talking about you and everything that made you who you are today, but also your amazing book that you've got out, you do so many things, Angie. So I'm just going to read out here. You are a leadership coach, an accredited integrative therapist, a keynote speaker, and an author who helps leaders and individuals navigate complexity with clarity, resilience, and emotional intelligence. You've worked with organizations including Google, the BBC, Meta, AstraZeneca, the NHS, Parliament, and Penguin, supporting leaders to think clearly under pressure, strengthen emotional agility, and build inclusive, high-trust cultures, blending real-world experience with strengths-based cultures and coaching psychology and therapeutic insight. Your work supports meaningful, personal, and professional growth. Welcome to the show, Angie. So good to have you here. Yeah.
You.
So, my lovely Angie, I always thought out where did it all begin, and not just in terms of your life's career, life choice, life path, but really like where did you arrive? So, where on the planet did you arrive, and what family system were you born into? Give us a little insight, a little window into the beginning of your life.
So my parents were in roles that were, kind of managing people and caregivers. My mum looked after people with mental health conditions and geriatrics. So I was one of those kind of latchkey kids. So that meant I had in those days, way back, literally string round my neck with my front door key on it, so that when mum and dad were out at work, I could let myself into the house when I'd finished school. And so in the holidays, there wasn't this availability of after school clubs that there is now, or the trend of having, people taking care of your kids just wasn't there. So, well, it's not a trend, an actual practical system wasn't in place. So I would go a lot with mum and dad to their workplaces, and that constituted my school holidays. So I was around a lot of diversity at a very young age, and around quite complex situations with people with big feelings. And I think that that was something that really did influence my decisions moving into an adult life. But also when there's some photographs of us as kids, and for some reason I was always, I mean, this is slightly tongue in cheek, but I was always in a nurse's uniform, and then cut to much later on in life, I became a performer, and this kind of nurse muse came into effect. But I think there was that wanting to help others from a really early age, but I didn't follow a trajectory. So I did many different things, and my early career was in film and television, in production, which led me to the next step, which was to become like a writer, producer, performer. So I went to drama school, and then I had an eclectic portfolio of work following that that was very much centered around marketing, which then I segued into really skilling up and really learning about how to help people without just being someone that was rescuing. So that, I mean, that's quite a lot, but that's really the story of how it came to be.
Oh my God, amazing. And whereabouts? I mean, there's so much in here, so I don't want to not pay it proper respect, because especially that thing that you said, I grew up in complex scenarios, complex situations with people that had a lot of big feelings, right? You know, that thing that you said, your parents would take you with them to their work, and that would sort of be your holiday. And it's really interesting because I had the same experience. Also, I'm from Denmark, hands up, and it's very normal. You just bring your kids everywhere. It's not really now we have kids and now we don't do stuff. It's just we have kids and they're just an addition to family life, to life itself. So that thing of like being around people as a child, experiencing big people, adults with big emotions, and not just trying to make sense of it, but actually trying to calm the situation, trying to understand, trying to navigate not just how you were feeling, but the atmosphere in the room. I mean, when you said that, I just felt the heaviness at times. It must have been. You also found it interesting and intriguing, but also the thickness of the density of the atmosphere in the room at times. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think, having to, that automatically, trains you to become able to deal with such complexities at such a young age. So anyway, without diving into a whole hole about that, because that's just, but thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's super powerful. I don't know if you already mentioned it. What city were you born in?
I was born in London, and
Ah,
then quite early on, my parents relocated to Whitstable, which is in the Kent coast, so southeast of the UK. And Whitstable it's become quite a known place. I don't know if you've ever been there, but a lot of people know about
and
it.
is that where you're going to have all like the oysters and stuff? People go to the beach, right? Is that and it's really cute, quaint town. Is that right? That's what I sort of remember.
Yeah, it's a pebble beach. It's not very
Yeah.
comfortable, but along the Kent coast, it can be quite kiss me quick type, a stick of rock and candy floss and fun fare. Whereas Whitstable's more steeped into the tradition of the fishing. We had a huge fishing industry, so there's lots of fishing sort of, I want to say memorabilia, but it's still an active industry. So very much about local industries, and in the I don't know when's, but steeped in history, there was a lot of smuggling that used to happen along that coastline. So there's a lot of smugglers' caves and this type of thing. But I was really lucky because Whitstable had the beach, it had the sunshine, it had the outdoors, it had the community, and I was completely surrounded by creatives. So all of my primary school, the year I was in, most people have gone into some kind of art industry or art organization. And it was a really playful, very free space. Again, in secondary school, it became less so because that particular school I went to was very sort of focused on business and technology and this kind of thing, which back then wasn't as rich as it is now. So it was less sexy. It was kind of like, oh, where's the art gone? But I just grew up in this really wonderful uh, culture of music and dance and art, and I was very free. So that was nice. Yeah. Although I have to say the downside is that it's also quite steeped in the schools that we went to were quite religious. So there was this kind of slight antichrist thing going on. But if we park that and think about what did the individuals get, it was a really wonderful time, and those relationships still remain. They're very strong. People, we're in this satellite network of people keeping in touch, and albeit we none of us really have that much in common now, but we have that photographic memory of that time that was very free.
Amazing. And how old were you when you then decided to leave Whitstable? And did you go straight to London or did you go straight to Asia? Because obviously, I know from know from our amazing chats that you spend a lot of time in Asia. Did you go to London first?
No, I went to Asia. So we at that to set it in a political history, it was Thatcherism and there was mass unemployment and the future was not bright. So, having done my A levels, there was very little choice around further education because there wasn't much funding. And we certainly weren't in a position to pay for that. So, the options were really limited. And I just knew then it was a situation of just get out and try something different with the idea that if it didn't work, you can come back. So I had the opportunity to take this. It was not a year out, but as I've got older, the only way people understand it is to just explain it like that. I was like, I'll take a year out. Really, I was just a nomad. I just went off with my rucksack and went to Hong Kong because Hong Kong then was under the British ruling, which meant I didn't have to apply for a visa, so I could work. And I wound up in again a really amazing community of people who were backpackers and travelers, but mainly I met local people. My friends were local people who predominantly had mixed race parents or all were local people. So a lot of my friends are Eurasian and they're scattered all around the world and they're very successful and super fun. So we had a real, in this situation and in Whitstable, it was that though the people around you became your family. And that was really powerful. Yeah.
I love that. And how old were you when you did that, when you went off on this amazing and kind of open-ended adventure, I guess? How old were you?
I was 18. So I was 18 and I took a one-way ticket. So I went to London to join a temping agency because this was kind of plan B or plan A, do some temping work. There was this, it's called Miss London. And in the back of this free publication that you could get on the tube, there was a job for a croupier. So I applied for the job as a croupier. I had an interview. And when I got to the interview, actually, the job wasn't for a croupier. The job was to pack boxes in some kind of tunnel somewhere. And the idea was that if you do that for us, we can see where, we can see whether you can walk and talk. We can see how human you are. And then we might think about, giving you training to be a croupier. So I was just like, this is total BS. So I bought a one-way ticket to Hong Kong with the idea that I would work in a bar and earn enough money to come back. Yet I hadn't considered I'd want to stay there. And staying there was definitely the right decision.
Oh my God, I love this, Angie. It's so beautiful to hear all of this because I don't know if you know, but I left home and country at the ripe age of 16. So similar age to you. But at 16, I went to London because I was super fortunate. I got a full scholarship to the dance school I was going to. So at least, yes, I left home and country by myself, but I had an institution I was going to, I had a structure I was going to. So the fact that you at 18 literally just was like, I'm going to go to Hong Kong and we shall see what happens is so so inspiring. I love hearing your story. Absolutely amazing. And also because again, this is all a lead up, all a build up to understanding what in the end, in today's age, prompted you to write your amazing book. And I'm just going to pause this for a moment because I really want to read to listeners a little bit about what this is about. So, Angie, you've written a book and it just sounds so good. I'm so excited to read the whole thing. And it's called A.N.G.E.R, as in A.N.G.E.R. No dot. Get what you want without losing yourself. Oh, so powerful. Especially because I talk a lot about anger and the energy behind anger and all of the bad rep that anger always gets, which I'm sure is, your absolute area of expertise. And I'm so excited to hear more from you on that in a little bit. But when I saw the title, honestly, and not anger, Angie, sorry, I was like, this is the best title ever. And finally, anger, the energy of it, everything, the beauty of it, the benefits of it, all of it gets a whole shelf, a whole book for itself, as it was supposed to. Because, like a lot of the time, oh, people come to me and they're like, Josie, I feel so much anger and there's shame and there's guilt and there's this, oh, I don't even want to tell anyone that I have this feeling I shouldn't be having. So I'm super excited. And again, I'm going to read a little bit about the book. So it says here, Anger, get what you want without losing yourself. A practical, science-backed guide to turning anger into clarity, confidence, and effective action without damaging relationships or compromising who you are. Designed for real-world challenges, the book helps readers self-coach through emotionally charged situations, especially in the workplace, using proven strategies to decide what works best and when. Through case studies and interviews, it shows that constructive change is not only possible, but also repeatable. In a world marked by social upheaval, geopolitical tension, and increasing personal pressure, many of us struggle with intense emotions and unclear responses. This book invites readers to listen to anger rather than suppress it, transforming it into a powerful tool for life. I made that last little bit myself because there was a photo in the way, but I'm sure that's what you meant. Yes, there you are. Oh, yeah. So for people on YouTube, this is the book. People on Spotify, head over to YouTube and actually see it's such a beautiful cover as well. So we're going to jump back in time. You are in Hong Kong, you're 18, and like you said, you bought a one-way ticket and, had a plan A, plan B, but not realizing what would happen if you actually wanted to stay. So what did happen?
What happened? I began to really just love it there, and there was lots of people of similar ages, albeit I was the youngster. It's really sad. I'm not there anymore. I was the young person in a group. So I was the youngest, and I think the age group of the main group that I was with was sort of like plus 10 years. Of course, I had friends all that were all different ages. And it just felt right. So everything was aligned. I got a job as a hostess in a pizza restaurant called Graffiti, which I just stood at like a lectern, stood at the desk. But they had a DJ set at the weekend. So the crew that came in to do the music got chatting to me, and we were very similar ages. We were just really young people, and they adopted me in a way. And then they started to put on gigs around town. Called the Love Train, which was just a group of creatives coming together who had day jobs and they were doing this in the evenings. So I began to learn much more about how to survive there and where to go and get different types of work. I really didn't consider coming back. And I remember when I went to the airport and left, at the time I left here, I was in a very mismatched relationship with somebody that it wasn't working. And my parents actually took me to Heathrow the night before my flight, because they had thoughts that I might get persuaded by this person to stay, which I really didn't, but they were trying to be really good parents and like, it's really important you go. And as I departed, my dad said, I really don't want to see you. I don't want to see you before 6 months, which I got on the plane with this, like, I can't believe this is what they've said to me, poor me. It was a brilliant piece of advice because he was saying, give it a go. So my adult self, I can actually translate what that meant. It was that kind of like just giving me that kick that I needed. But anyway, when I got there, it was really evident that coming back here to mass unemployment and political upheaval and depression was just not the right choice. And very quickly, I had lots of really interesting jobs. So I was TEFL trained. I was teaching English as a foreign language. I was doing some promotion work. I mean, loosely promotion work. It was all above board. I'd host parties for high net worth clients for their children. So I'd dress up as a fairy. And at the time, I thought I had a really amazing costume. I really felt that I was really rocking the fairy vibe. But when I look back at the photos, it's kind of a bit obscene. I just had a bit of netting with a swimsuit on and some kind of like really naff wings. But
Oh,
all of this stepstoned into I got a job as a roving reporter for the local TV station on the English channel, which led eventually to me writing children's scripts. So in one program, I was a co-presenter, and then for another show, I conceptualized and wrote the show, had a co-writer, wrote children's scripts, which really opened doors and led me to spaces and places that I wouldn't have seen or be able to have access to. And when I came out of that, I was more qualified to then work with international crews that came into Hong Kong. So my role was always very much like the intermediate person between the Chinese crew and the British crew, because there was, as you can imagine, quite a lot of difference. And my role was to um, translate and broker some of those differences. So that was really interesting. I worked on a whole series of a program back then called Soldier Soldier, which was based around soldiers working overseas, and there was an entire series shot there, and I was the third AD. And the first AD let me be in the room with the action. So I had the director, the first AD let me in. I was quite small, I was young, so I was able to be with the actors and support their needs. But I saw so much around film production, acting. I was having like daily master classes, which then really did, of all the options of the things that I could do, I thought, oh, actually, I think I'd really like to have a go at this acting gig, which, I don't know if that was a good decision in the end, but I don't regret it.
You know what? I'm just sitting here going, I hope that I'm sure and I know you know this, but for listeners out there, try and notice how Angie's upbringing, the fact that you were a child that was, brought along into the adults world very quickly, into adults with big emotions, having to navigate that, understand that, detect, dilute that, organize that, change the atmosphere, this whole big orchestra job that you did as a child. Notice how that already as a child gave you the tools, the key instruments that you then needed for that time in Hong Kong, because as you said, you became the intermediate Ada, right? You were the
Yeah.
bridge, the link. Like those were skills that you had learned and picked up not just in early day of Hong Kong life. Those were skills that you had literally been learned and that had emerged through you since adulthood. And I just think this is such a key note because often we can look back at our childhood, especially, I mean, I'm the first one to do that and go, wow, that was really hard. Wouldn't want that for anyone else. But it's so beautiful when we look back and we go, but it all makes sense now. That everything that you were taught just through lived experience, everything that you worked out and realized that you were capable of doing was then used, like super useful, came in super useful during Hong Kong life. And I'm sure, throughout your whole life and etc. But just wanted to highlight that because I just think it's such an important piece of information to the puzzle.
It's really interesting. So I haven't connected those dots at all. And actually, I've always had this idea that I've been pretty rubbish at the other jobs I've done, not the job I'm doing now. But there was something I was able to do, which was this. It's that kind of brokering. Because on paper, the jobs that I've had pretty until I trained as a therapist and a coach, and I went through rigorous training for a very long period of time, which was intentional. Prior to that, all the jobs I had, I would not have got had I gone through a traditional route of applying with a CV and having the traditional interview. Everything I've done has been kind of in a very kooky, strange way. But not managed, that sounds tough. I've really embraced the roles and been able to kind of bring something. When I was younger, people used to say you're wiser than your age, or you're very wise. And someone said that to me not so long ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, and I found it quite alarming because I was like, if I'm not wise now, there's something wrong. But I think it's just a figure of speech. It's just that kind of, oh, that's wise. But it's not really wisdom as such. It's just that kind of being able to reflect on what's happening and think about it more coolly, which led to wanting to write the book in a way. Yeah.
No, absolutely, and yeah, I'm so excited. So here you are. All of this is happening in Hong Kong. At some point, did you end up staying for about 8 or 9 years? Is that what you mentioned?
I did. I fell in love. I met someone. We were engaged, and he had family in the Philippines, so we were in and out of the Philippines a lot. So I had kind of part one was Angie on her own with this friendship network that were my family, and part two was being in a relationship. But I did realize quite early on there that, you sort of your intention to get away from home and get away from structure and family and increase your freedom sometimes winds you up in the same situation. So being in a partnership with someone with the overheads of living together and there's a lot of kind of adult responsibilities and being accountable that you don't have as much of when you're single. Um, so I had to, but Hong Kong's very like London. As you're in Thailand now, you're in Bangkok, and I'm sure this resonates. You can have so many different chapters there. You can have so many different lives there. It's such a fast-paced, frenetic, dynamic city that you could do it multiple times. So I did stay for what felt really natural. Um, and I'm sorry, I forgot what else you were asking me. What was
Oh,
the
don't you worry at all. I love it, and I love how you articulate yourself, like your choice of words, your sound. Really, really beautiful, Angie. I can really like feel your energy. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. So all I was asking was, how long did you end up staying in Hong Kong, and why did you choose to leave when you did?
Yeah, so we have to remember as well, in Hong Kong, I was really capable and able, and I had super, super fun, but I was also alone. So I didn't have any, um, when I've looked at my uh, um, psychology, through astrology, Saturn was missing when I was born. So I had no structure. And I didn't, I had really massive orange hair, like really big 80s hair. I looked strange. And I can judge myself. I think I'm allowed to do that. And I didn't really have a sense for what to wear or, and I was running around in plimsolls because so I wasn't really eating the right food as well. So I think it's important to say that I had success and I was happy, but at the same time there was a lot of things that I needed to sort out about myself that I had no role models.
Mm.
Um, and what happened then was that, life takes over. We had several bereavements in the family, one of which was my cousin, who she was raised like a sister, and she was super young, and she passed away of cancer. So I felt this real desire to come back to Europe and to connect with my family and to um, really understand the family dynamic because at this point my identity had become something completely different. So I was really searching for that lineage, like who am I? What am I? Where do I come from?
Of course.
That was the kind of sense to come back. But the huge draw was that I had gotten a place at drama school. So that combination um, sort of literally drove me back to the UK. And I went instead of landing and decompressing and taking things at my own pace. I just literally got off the plane, drove to drama school, and then did this really intensive course, which was, I felt that it was a really good thing to do, and I enjoyed it. But I really recall being quite sad. I recall being quite really lonely and like someone had just turned the light off. So I
Mhm.
wasn't able to show up as myself. And people, across life, I don't care what anyone says, people judge you. So what I wasn't able to talk about or translate was my experience. I just literally had 2 minutes ago in Asia. So people saw me as this thing, and by then the orange hair had died down, and I was looking a little bit different. But it was that kind of the judginess, and then I bumped into, in quite a horrible way, into this sense of classism. So where did I sit in this structure here? That of course in Asia that you don't even see that. So I found all of that quite activating, and it can really disable you, and didn't have the tools to know how to fix that. But that's, again, part of how I wound up where I am today and what happened next.
And can I just ask, I mean, this is all just so amazing and beautiful and challenging and heartbreaking and heart opening and all of it, all of the emotions in between. And it's like watching a movie, like, you know, listening to you and the way that you use your body, and oh, it's just gorgeous. So when you did go back to London, were you around 28 or 29?
I was 20, yeah, 27, something like
Yeah.
that.
So those are also the years leading up to 30, right? And as we all know, when we're going in towards a new chapter, whether or not we are into the whole age thing or not, something does shift. Of course it does, because we are about to embark on something new. And I certainly remember myself when I was around 27. I feel like in my head, I've always been 10 years older than I am. So anyway, I thought I was turning 40. I was turning 30. It wasn't that it was a big, scary thing, but it was more that I personally looked at my life. I definitely think it puts everyone into a space of reflection, and you kind of go, is this a reality that I want to keep going with? Or do I want something to shift? And personally, when I was 27, I looked at my life, and from the outside, I was modeling all the time. I was dancing all the time. I was traveling all the time, looked extremely glamorous. And I felt like I was dying. I was like, ugh, like I loved dancing, but I hated the modeling. I was grateful I could do it. But absolutely was not my soul's purpose. You know, I was just every single moment I did a modeling job, I was like pushing the money to the side, into that savings account. You know, it had a purpose, but definitely like I just reflecting, and also for listeners out there, if you're finding yourself in your late 20s and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I thought life was good. What the fuck is going on here? Completely normal. And of course, listeners out there in your late 30s going into 40s, same thing for you, you know, slightly different variations, of course, because we are always in different evolutions of our soul's journey. But just, I think it's a really cool factor to put in that thing of, there definitely is something about these specific years. And also, as you mentioned about Saturn, I love astrology. So what is your birth? What's your sun sign? Can I ask, Angie?
Yeah, so I'm a Gemini. There's only one Gemini that I think most of us don't like, but most Geminis, every time I like somebody in a film, I'm like looking up there, but guess they're Gemini. Quite proud of that. Uh, I did enter into that Saturn return in a very disbobulated way because, as I mentioned, I was not seen for who I was. So I was scrapping around in the dirt for work and finding things very difficult. And I didn't talk about my experiences, and I certainly didn't like what we call show off, promote them. But when I did try to hold conversations with people, their disinterest was just insurmountable. So I wrote about my Saturn return. I wrote about the book I've written is a very short novello. Well, the nature of a novello is it's short. It's a story around the idea. Yeah, so it's when Saturn last exit to Balaam is all around the Saturn return, and the way that I was able to kind of turn that into a story was the idea that Saturn had left me, so that Saturn was returned. So I was consciously going out and trying to seduce and manipulate Saturn to return to me by being very surface. This is the premise of the story: being very surface and doing for good on top, but not underneath. And the story is the trials and tribulations of, well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, that didn't work out. But it was really about embracing that. And as you say, I actually started writing it when I was that age, and I just shoved it in a drawer and revisited it when I turned 50 because I felt that actually I had had enough distance and enough reflection to kind of craft that story in a way that was more true. I think if I'd tried to do it earlier, I probably would have glossed over things. So it's not it's a fun comical piece. It's not depressing, but I was able to kind of do it with truth, being that much older, and I had the same feelings at 50 as I did then, which was this transition really meant something in terms of I can't go forward not sorting my house out because I know what's not serving me and I'm an adult and I need to be accountable for that. And part of that whole piece was looking at completion. So the novella was a completion piece. Let's complete the things that I said I would honor to myself and do. So it was an exercise of completion, and I did enjoy that. Yeah.
I'm glad. I really love this. And again, so obviously for the astrology lovers out there, you guys already know about Saturn, but for anyone else, whether into astrology or not, if you can just look at Saturn, like you're saying, Angie, as, it's like time. Time is the greatest initiator often in our life, right? The fact that we know we're going to run out of time, like literally is, not, you're not sounding morbid. We are only here for a certain amount of time. So for every day that goes by, every now and then Saturn comes and kind of knocks on our shoulder and goes like, hey, maybe it's time now. But what's also beautiful about Saturn is that, again, as a metaphor, it's, he's always kind of around the same way that time is always around. But there are certain points in our life where time feels closer than ever, right? Where the hourglass feels like it's getting lower on one side, right? And I think, the fact that you started, you had the experience, you started writing the book, the novella, and then you put it in a drawer, you said, right? And I think this is a really key thing. So Saturn, concept of time, and if we look at anything in nature, everything blooms when the time is right, and we cannot force that. And so there was nothing wrong. It's not like there was anything wrong with you, Angie, like no pun intended, you not finishing when you first started writing it. And for listeners out there, maybe you are currently finding yourself at a space, a transition point in your life. You started a project and maybe you're like, oh, I'm just that type that never finished. No, you're not. That's not necessarily true at all. Maybe this project just isn't, maybe you haven't lived enough. Maybe there's not enough life experience just yet. Maybe you're not ripe enough. And that's okay. And I think that's the same thing with the whole Saturn, right? Like, so Saturn returns I think the transition is every 30 years, right? About every 30 years. So
28 to 50, yeah.
something like that, right? So it's a slow burner. And there's something beautiful about that. And again, Saturn, the same way. So just because something isn't visible, isn't tangible, hasn't manifest in one's life just yet, doesn't mean it's not for you, doesn't mean it's not coming. Just means that perhaps actually we can really learn something from Angie's story here, and perhaps it's just time to put it in a drawer and maybe actually be okay with that. So just that little, I think that's something really beautiful, because I think it's really easy, especially in a very fast-paced world that we live in today, where it kind of feels like we should have the inspiration, the motivation, and now the action, and now it's done. Like, right? Actually, there is so much beauty in at times going, you know what? This thing over here, that deserves a drawer. And I'm going to put it in that drawer and it's going to germinate. It's going to do its thing and I'm going to live life. And the little project is living life because we're always in relationship. And then if one day it feels like you said, that feeling of, I owe it to myself, this was about completion. I feel ready. I want to honor this. Then you go ahead and you do it. And I think that's a really, really beautiful story. And thank you so much for sharing that, Angie. I absolutely love that.
And also, just on the fact check, it's 28 years. But when I think when, what I understand is it's years either side. So I think it can start at age 28. It's typically at 30 you feel the pinch, but it can go on to 32, meaning it sat in return. And I think I believe I had a very long one. So which equals being in sort of like turmoil for much longer than some people who kind of slip through the net. But that's all very much individual. It's so individual. Yeah. And it makes sense retrospectively. At the time, if you're sort of conscious of the concept, you don't quite, it's hard to compute. But when you're looking back, and then of course you have, if you're lucky, you'll have at least three in your lifetime.
Amazing. I love that. Okay, so then you did your drama course. Where are we up to in life now? So now you're like in early 30s, I would assume, maybe 30, something like that. Where did you decide? Were you living in London? What was life like for you? A little window into Angie life in your early 30s, please.
Okay, so the drama school I went to Guildford, which not Guildhall, but they're equally, Guildhall was brilliant. Guildford is very centered around musical theatre. They do have an acting course. So I was on the acting course. And when I tumbled out of that, I realized that work again was very hard to get. Just it's very, very, I don't need to tell any listener how hard that is to get work as an actor. So I started to write and produce my own work and had several one-woman shows. then what happened, people would come, casting agents, one or two you'd sort of keep on their shoulder. Can you come and see me? In order to get an agent. But the advice I was given was things like, oh, well, if you're in a one person show, we don't know if you can act with another person. Perhaps you need to lower your resonance, it's too high, or I think maybe the hair's too. So again, this kind of information is so irresponsible to give to a young person. You can get all sorts of body dysmorphia, you can get insecurities. So you have to have very broad shoulders and kind of really be able to take this stuff with a pinch of salt. I'm sure today that's less prevalent, but when we're talking like several years ago, a lot of the advice that I was given was really it's not grounded, and it wasn't meaningful, and it wasn't about my best interests. I did, without an agent, manage to I was in Popcorn for a year, written by Ben Elton. I was in a play at the Royal Court. I had a couple of commercials under my belt. I was doing bits of TV, so I was able to do um go quite far without any agent looking after me. But it really became evident that I was kind of grieving the job I never had. So that sounds awfully dramatic, but when you're wandering around the streets because you're not working, you're just left with my potential is not being used. And as you say, the time is ticking. We're aware of time, and it's like I'm wasting my days and times and years because my full potential is not being utilized. People aren't seeing me, and that's largely down to my perception of myself and what I was able to do in terms of how can I enable myself to do things. So I decided to try lots of different things, lots of different kind of professions, which began this portfolio of different jobs and took contract work. So not to kind of bore the listeners with every bit, but I wound up in Yahoo, which back in the day was a competitor to Google. They were something. Today, it's a smaller company and it lost huge market share. But at that time, I landed again. There's this expression, like landing with your bum in the butter. I landed in a company at the right time, right place, and had enormous fun. And I traveled the world and I saw lots of different things. I was privy to executive teams and C-suite, and doing lots of fun things in Cannes with the marketing team and the sales teams. So that kind of enabled me to really have a massive reset and fulfill that potential that I had. And think about very aligned with yourself, Josie, and very aligned with the oh, what's it all about though? This doesn't feel as nourishing. I don't feel my sole purpose is being it is here. Uh,
Mm.
so I did have an income, a good income. I did have access to travel. I had all the things that you might wish for, but inside I felt quite empty and hollow, and I just felt there has to be more. And that's when I began to take myself more seriously. And the options that kind of followed were how can I best serve myself in getting trained
Mm.
without having no income
Mm.
and not being at work and staying engaged in life. So I took a very slow journey toward being who I am now. Whereas I meet people today that, do that in very different styles. So you have the person who'll go and do a degree and then a master's and a PhD, and then they're out the gate. Or somebody who trains as this, that, there's so many different options, so many different options. And the best option is the one that you take. The best option is the one you choose. And that was what I did. And it enabled me to be upfront and personal across businesses with different players, watching the most incredible work, but the most entrenched political toxicity that you can imagine. So I've kind of been exposed to what was missing, which was the business side of business.
Mm.
So being on the art side, that's okay, but really understanding how businesses work and how business people are was what the next kind of chapter gave me, and even more motivation to continue with my learning and development so that I could come out the other end as I am now.
Absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for sharing all of this so openly, Angie. I think this is just so refreshing for everyone to hear. And as I always say, whether or not you are, because I have a lot of people that are artists on the show, and I'm always like, even if you don't feel you're an artist yourself, or into the creatives, there's something here for everyone. And I think like you just said, like regardless of whatever path in life you choose and whatever path you continue to choose, it is always the right one for you, you know. Because again, so talking of the Saturn theme, there can be so much pressure, right? So much pressure, and we look at other people, and now we have all the social media where everyone else is like, hey, we should be doing this thing, right? And if our story inside feels differently and it looks differently, we can really feel like an outsider, right? And on the deepest level, we all deeply long to belong, not only to our own self, but we long to belong to other groups of human beings. So it's such a human need and desire to kind of not even judge and compare, but just go, is there a group for me out there? And have I somehow missed my group? And so thank you so much for sharing that. Hey, I followed this thing. It felt right until it didn't. And then something else did. And then, reflecting back over your life and going, wow, this is what I learned from this group. This is what I learned from being here. This is when I started to kind of, like you said, I wanted to find and build a structure within myself and for myself. And I wanted to honor myself, right? I love that so much. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. Let's take you forward in time a little bit now. And let's take you into, you have your amazing book. I'm sure, as a fellow writer here myself, I always say, like, a book doesn't just, it's not like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, this is the book, and 2 days later it's there. Obviously a book, it lives and breathes and moves within you, usually for a long, long time before you even start to put it onto paper. I don't know how your experience was, but tell us a little bit about it. When did you first become aware? When did you get that little, like, slight hint of, like, I want to write about this, or I want to create something with this, or I want to bring this thing to life, or there has to be a purpose with everything that I've experienced in life? Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And I think it was just a seed that was kind of fermenting, if that's the right word, or germinating. I don't know what the word for a very long time. And that really, if it's the backward forward thing. So if I go back here, I can see backwards in my past, there was a lot around anger, rage, aggression, violence that I was exposed to in lots of different settings. And what really kind of brought it to the fore, as we said COVID before, but my clients bring it, but they bring it in the session, or they're kind of, with all respect, dump it in the session. But very few people want to talk about that, or are able to articulate, or even have a felt sense of it. So it was kind of into my thinking about how we need to have, we don't need to force anyone. It's not, there has to be a consensual piece here, but also it's, how do we just normalize this? It's really okay. It's really okay. And it's okay by me, as long as someone's not harming me, it's really okay by me. So I wanted to kind of break the myth that you mentioned earlier, that anger is aggression. It's not. So you can have anger, aggression leading to violence, but you can have anger as a signal. And what do you need? And this is what I was looking at. And I ran some research before I started writing the book to see how it would land. And the research came back, or the data came back, with a 49-52% split, which was so polarizing. It's the same as politics, it's the same as Brexit, it's the same, which says to me, yes, therefore it needs to be, or not it needs to be, but there is a space and a place for this. And then cut to, the thing that was preventing me from writing about it was, the more people lent in and said, I don't think you should do that, it's a bit icky, the more I understood I had to lean into what repulsed myself and others. Some players would say to me things like, yeah, I know, like if I said, oh, I think about doing anger. Yeah, do you know, I noticed that you can get angry, and just this very insidious, passive aggressive. Yeah, I know it's like, whoa, okay. So all of this is huge this fabric is really motivational for me to write something. I'm not the first person to write a book on anger. Clearly, it has been written about, but this book is about anger now, and it's not about anger. It's straight to what you can do in different situations to offset your anger and learn about what it's telling you, learn the signals. What is it telling you? What is the mess? Anger is a messenger. Then what happened was I was kind of like, I just don't have the time, not as in way I'm so busy, but literally I didn't have the time. I couldn't take time away from my client work because I have bills to pay, etc. So it's I just don't, I can't buy myself the luxury of free time, unpaid time. And then so what I have skipped in the 4 years ago, I got married 2 years ago, yeah, woo, late developer, to the lovely Michael. And what actually happened was that last February, around Valentine's Day, we got a call to say that his mum was pretty sick. We wound up being her primary carers living in her home. So we had to relocate from London. And she had stage 4 advanced cancer of the lung, um, and other body parts. So we knew that we were in a time capsule in a very limited time space, but it was really essential that she had the best time that we could provide her with as she was leaving the planet. And it was then that I had the time to write this because it was really inappropriate and untenable to have clients, to see clients, to travel and go and see them in person or to see people online because, as time progressed, I couldn't say, oh, could you just hold on? You kind of run out of I think it's the Amazon man. I can just turn the washing machine off. Oh, I think my neighbor, all of those excuses kind of evaporate and you're literally like, I have someone with really high needs downstairs and I don't want to do this. But also, this lady did not want me, I'm the outlaw. She didn't want me sitting by her side the whole time. So I said to her, how about, and Patricia was a very beautiful lady who wanted everybody to just live their lives. So I brokered with her and said, how about I write this book, and pull back on my work? I didn't really explain what the book was about. So she thought for some time I was writing a book about her life. So every time I went in with a cup of tea or something, she would catch me up with her entire life story. Until I actually got the balls to say to her, it's a book on anger. But that's what happened while we had that downtime. And certainly after she passed, there was a lot of paperwork and administrative tasks that we had to kind of complete that meant I was still locked out of work, but I had this space where I could go and just get everything out of my brain. And, doing a literature review is a big chunk of this. So, which means, reading other people's work and looking into different concepts and what other people are saying. And I had that headspace to do that. So really, she gave me the gift of time, by looking after her, which is great. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love this so much. And I also love, again, so again, from listeners out there, looking at your life, Angie, it's like you've been so in tune with what you felt about situations. So whenever, not just opportunities, but whatever situations, people, spaces, life itself would open up within you, you've been responding with it. So again, and I'm sure, if you've repetitively had, clients, people, family, loved ones kind of be passive aggressive with you or somehow just like bringing something or not believing in you, of course that stirs stuff up. But I love again that instead of stirring it up and going, oh no, that's just how life is, or oh well, there's nothing I can do about it, you actually was like, oh, hang on, this keeps happening. This seems to be a theme, and instead of, yeah, whatever, getting lost in the downward spiral about the personal reasons of what that said about you or anything else, which I'm sure, might also have been a minute because, our minds are clever like that. But to then be able to go, this keeps reoccurring. This tells me that there's a need, the world has a need to learn more about this at this moment in time.
Yeah, it really is this moment in time
I,
piece.
and I really agree on that. And I think that's so beautiful. And again, so I always, in my own life and everyone else's, I always share like, whatever you're feeling and not just personally, can you let that be your healing? So the same thing, whatever stirs you up, when you're noticing something within yourself or in the world as a whole, don't just moan about it. Ask yourself, how can I best support myself? How can I best support the world? Like pour your energy, even when it's frustration or it's sadness or it's grief or it's, incredible joy, like pour that energy into something productive. And it's so amazing that you decided, I can talk about this for hours because I love talking about the concept of anger. And it's so funny because I've had 3 people here in Bangkok ask me about anger and going, oh, I'm doing this meditation because I don't want to feel this. And I'm like, but anger is so beautiful. So, it's so gorgeous you've written this book. So tell us more about it. So it really came from your own lived experiences. And then you started doing all this incredible research, and also the fact that you were like, again, you're like a magician, you're like an alchemist, you're using what life gives you. So you go, okay, I can't just take time out completely, but then this, again, in inverted brackets, come as like opportunity came up where, you wanted to be there for your partner and your partner's mother, bless her. And then again, you worked with that situation, because a lot of people could have gone, well, oh no, I just can't, couldn't possibly write this now. And you were like, no, I'm going to turn the best, I'm going to turn a very, very, very challenging and very sad situation into something positive. And you did. And that's just, really amazing.
I really agree with you. It's the idea, if you feel that you're in victim, it's that sense of what do I need, what do I want to have happen, and what do I need to do to get that. And that was the kind of the sense of it. And also for me, this is my medicine. This is my, if I don't sort of I've never enjoyed, and again, it's a really personal choice. I've never enjoyed, whenever I've experienced any kind of trauma or upset, or you know, anything linked to people passing, this kind of thing. For me, I need to do something that's around the written word, verbally, this kind of thing. It's not okay for me to just sit with that. Everyone's so different, so I don't want to offend anyone. Your way is your way, but for me, this felt important. And not to say it was a very complex situation, because what Patricia, known as Pat, what she asked as her wishes were not respected by others. So Michael and I, my partner and I, had to be those kind of guardian of wishes. And she didn't have the, she just didn't have the inclination or the intention, the desire to go out front and do that herself. She kind of lent on us to do that. So we became kind of in this role that meant some people weren't happy. And then we were living in suburbia, which, if you've been in a big frenetic, I've lived in cities my whole life. So suddenly, apart from when I was very small, so suddenly being in suburbia was such a culture shock.
Oh my
Such,
God.
I mean, people are really interested on what day does the bin go out. And for me, this was just mind blowing. I In London, I'm happy to come home safely. There, I need to know what colour bin and what day. And if you don't know, that's an issue. Then there's lots of different players involved with palliative care. It can get messy. And I was met and confronted by other people's anger around this. And then I had my own, with regards to what was happening, how we were being perceived, all of this. So without going into any personal detail that would be attributed to anyone else, if I just hold my own, it was like, wow, yeah, this really is the time to think about what do I, but what would others need in situations that are quite high octane, so that they can just be themselves, and it's really important to feel, which is a lot of, what you advocate, Josie, is that kind of, you have your voice, and you have a right to be. So it was that sense of this will help people show up without feeling violated or minimizing themselves. And actually, what's happened as a kind of byproduct of writing this is that it's out the bag now. Like, the horse has left the stable. I'm now completely unable to go back. I'm unable to not say. I'm unable to not do. which doesn't mean I'm more argumentative or less duh. It just means that it's so natural for me now to to listen to what to think about where's this coming from? What is the signal telling me? What am I going to do about that? Choices. And if it involves speaking out, so in interestingly or not interestingly, depending on how invested you are, but a couple of people have said more recently, you're very direct. You know what? I've got news. I've always been very direct. I just haven't been listened to. So that's the difference that the book has given me. People can now kind of, oh, she's quite direct. And direct is okay as long as, and what does direct mean anyway? It the truth hurts, but sometimes if we're not talking in truth, whoa, we're talking in layers and layers of passive aggressive, we're layers of this stuff I don't have time for. If anyone comes to me with it, I'm going to say it. So obviously, in my client work, I don't want to frighten people off. We unpack this and look at that. But more often than not, my clients are asking me how to manage the very same thing. And I know that we could argue I don't see my blind spots and I can be this and this, but I certainly think that being grounded in yourself enough to be able to speak up is an amazing way to experience life. And you have to put down what do people think about you, as long as you're not rude, you're not hurting anyone, because it's not my business what other people think about me. Yeah.
100%. And you are also not, like you said in the beginning, you're not here to rescue anyone, but you are here. Your only responsibility is to speak your soul's truth into existence.
Yeah.
And that is really what it is. And of course, we can choose tone of voice, we can choose choice of words, we can also choose to leave a situation, right? But I think, the fact that, and this is not saying you, but a lot of society, we talk about the same thing, stress management or anger management. What about anger utilization? Utilizing it, and this is, I'm assuming, is what your book is all about, right? Anger, how to get what you want without losing yourself. And so, because this is a really potent energy, don't just give it all away. It's a potent energy. And I don't want to sit here and put words into your mouth, Angie, because you obviously really know what you're talking about. And your book, just looking at the content page, I was like, oh, I want to read all of it. Every chapter looks so juicy and so inspiring. And honestly, from my side and on behalf of the universe, your book is so needed, and I'm so grateful that you decided to make time, to get Saturn on your side, and to utilize that powerful energy of time and of anger, utilizing it. It's a potent energy of creation, so it's absolutely amazing. I want to ask you as well, because again, I'm having a little look at time, knock, knock. If you had just one or two sort of soul messages for humanity, I always ask people this on the podcast. So, I do want to offer this amazing opportunity to you as well, Angie. When you look back over your life, with the wisdom that you sit in now, with all the times where you said yes to something, with all the times where you said no, with all the times that where you spoke up, but no one listened or they didn't really get it, with everything that has led you into the amazing human being that you always were, but also that sits here in front of me now, what would be one or two soul messages for humanity?
If I center it around the book, I feel that the collective spirit of listening to what your anger is telling you, where it's coming from, and what you can do about it is so important right now. It's a difficult conversation to have, because when we look at what people who are advocates, people who are standing up for their rights, people who are doing this, and it's not ending well for them, they're still being overlooked, they're still being marginalized, you can lose, life is at stake, etc. It feels that this has to be handled with care and sensitivity. But I still believe that if you look at history, And when there's been transformation and restoration, it's because the collective mass has come together and looked at what can we do back to what do I want to have happen and how can I make that happen. So it really is a moment in time to say, please lean into that and please take that route. What are we without that? That's for me really important. And then I think secondly, you know, as we said, you're here for a very short time. It's really important that you are able to say your piece, be heard, be listened, but at the same time, listen to others because just sort of jumping out the box and calling things out and doing all these things are great, but other people have very many different ways of communicating and different needs. So you mentioned tone of voice. I'm going off in a tangent a little bit now, but tone of voice, people can get offended by tone of voice, but what are they seeing and hearing, and what are their assumptions about that? So if we want to be really good at investigating our anger, not managing it, we also have to consider difference and consider translation. Like how can we translate the human voice, the human communication pathways, if you will. So yeah, they're the two things for me.
Absolutely love it. And I can't wait to read your amazing book. How can, obviously, we will share links in the show notes. But otherwise, I know that you also have your book out in physical shops, right? Where can people find your beautiful book, Angie?
Yeah, I must give you the link. So that it's available online from all of the book stockists, so that you could be, if you're in the UK, that could be Waterstones or Browns. If you're in the US, that's Walmart. There's book.org, which is brilliant, supporting local independent books. Then Amazon, of course. In person, you can get it in London from Daunt in Marylebone and Hatchards in Piccadilly. It's it's available at all the major book shops online, and then the in-person pieces. And the in-person pieces will grow. The book was published by an independent publisher, so it takes time for it to land physically on the shelves, but you can certainly buy it online. So I have lots of friends and colleagues and clients in the US, and they are able to get their hands on it now. It's Amazon, it's available Amazon Singapore, so you can get it in Southeast Asia, Amazon here, UK, Amazon US. So yeah, please buy it and spread the word is the piece. Buy it, read it, enjoy it, and spread the word is the call to action.
Absolutely. And I think actually that summarizes our whole, our whole conversation here today and also your book. Life calls on you to move you. And I also think, as you said, anger is a signal. Anger comes to move you. Let yourself be moved somehow. And of course, we use our good mind and we try and make the best judgment we can so that we are not intentionally hurting others or ourselves in the process, but that it's an action. So I love your call to action here. Yeah. Angie, I could spend all day with you. I look so much forward to reading your book. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you
Lots of
very
love.